24, the podcast with Dan Bardell.
The host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell this week as Greg is on holiday. Told me it was a family holiday, and then I saw videos of him playing golf earlier on. So, yeah, great family holiday for Greg, first family holiday all together since he's become a dad. Jacob, did you have a good Christmas and New Year?
I did, yeah, thank you. It's a lot of travelling from Birmingham back to home, up to Manchester on Boxing Day, but it's been good, and I think this is the first week where I'm not having to travel anywhere. So, yeah, a nice bit of downtime.
Travel to the pub with me as well. Didn't we just before Christmas? We had a little get together, a Christmas dinner, if you will.
Lovely few drinks as well. After we changed location a few times, but it was a good pub, wasn't it?
Yeah, it didn't help that I got the time wrong as well. So you went to the initial location half an hour before me because I got the time wrong and said to me that it was dead. So we went somewhere else and we had a lovely time, a lovely little chat about Villa, which is what we're going to do now. We will come on to the FA Cup game later, and I did put a tweet out as well asking for some questions. There was plenty of those coming for Jacob and myself, probably more Jacob, if I'm being honest with you. So we'll get to them later on in the podcast. Just before we get going, this show is sponsored by Luke Roper. If you've got some money for Christmas, if you want to use the discount code, TVV20, you'll get 20% off everything on the Luke Roper website. And thanks to Luke as well, because they were kind enough to send me some clothes before my Sky Sports news stint. So always appreciated Luke Roper. And I did see Luke actually at the last game at Burnley as well. He's doing well, got himself to Villa Park. So it's always great to see Luke Roper. Jacob, transfers. Very difficult to discuss transfers with Villa. Everything you say gets jumped on. I said I didn't think we needed any players a month or so ago, and then every day I think I get a tweet reminding me of that fact. If a game starts to go badly at any point, I get a tweet saying I still think that we don't need any players. My understanding is that I don't think Villa will be particularly active from speaking to people. Maybe a couple of outgoings might lead to Villa changing their stance. But are you the same? Are you hearing the same things as me, that it doesn't feel like Villa are going to be massively active this January?
Yeah, I think so, Dan. I think it's one of those cases where they'll look, they'll chat between Emery, his power triangle, the owners as well, and they can see if there's any great opportunities there. But they're tight on FFP, but also they've got a really good squad, like you said a month ago. And Emery doesn't bring anyone in just to make up the numbers. They have to challenge that starting 11. And I don't think they've got the money to do that. Obviously, they've got their targets, and as you say, I think outgoings could change things. We'll come on to these players, but the players that have been featuring regularly or more recently, Duran, Dendoncker, these players go, then they would probably have to replace them. It's quite obvious, but yeah, I think it'd be quite a quiet window in terms of incomings, but I think the more interesting part will be outgoings.
Yeah, but I mean, out on the outgoings, is there any word that anyone is close to leaving, or that anyone maybe leaving? So Duran's obviously the big one, isn't he? He played in the FA Cup at the weekend. We know there's been some off the field issues. Villa are a little bit quiet about it, but there is rumours swirling around. I mean, the Milan link felt very much like an agent plant to me, and that's something that happens a lot in the football world. Agents planting stories to certain outlets, but is that something that's close?
There's nothing close in terms of first team players. I think one of the priorities going into the month was to get the younger lads out on loan, or in the case of one to sell permanently to get to help with FFP, and also to help their own careers as well. So I think that's been the main focus. But there's nothing close in terms of first team fronts. Obviously, John Duran. I put a tweet out the other day. He's obviously had a couple of off-field issues. That there's a few doubts possibly about. He's not always the most focused. He has had a few issues in terms of adapting to a new country, his discipline, his application, things like that. And Emery's talked about it at press conferences before. But the thing with John Duran is quite a catch-22, is that he's a precocious talent. On the pitch, he's impactful, isn't he? When he comes off the bench, he's either absolutely makes scores, he wins penalties, or you see the other petulant side of him where he could get easily sent off in a couple of games. But he makes an impact. He's a really good striker. But obviously, you'll have to mature and grow up. It's just a case of whether Emery sees him as a reliable enough striker right now to be Ollie Watkins' deputy, or the fact that maybe he's a little bit more, there's a few more issues that then he's currently worth, and that means a loan or a permanent move elsewhere.
Reading between the lines and speaking to other people, it feels like Duran is the number 9 for Colombia. I think he's their main striker. He's got a big money move, and it was a lot of money Villa paid for him a year ago. He's had a year at Villa now. does he almost feel like he's not perhaps getting as many opportunities as he would like? But then it works both ways, doesn't it? Because if he's not doing the stuff in training, and we know there's been issues around that, then he isn't going to get the football. There was a spell earlier on in the season where he disappeared from the bench for a few weeks. And again, this is me purely reading between the lines. I felt like that was linked to the training stuff.
He has had injuries, but again, you could also say that the injuries are, sometimes as a result of his professionalism and his discipline in terms of recovering from those injuries. Obviously, he wants to play a lot of games, but at the same time, he's here just turned 20, last month. Ollie Watkins is, one of the best strikers in the Premier League. He's not going to play every game. John Duran has to focus on what he's doing now, which is he's coming on. I think he's come on 25 times or something, since he's come. It's quite, the most out of any Premier League player. So he's got a good role there. He's learning under Unai Emery, but the thing that Emery wants is he wants malleable players that will listen to him, who heed his methods, who aren't going to kick up a fuss, if they have to sit on the bench or have to listen to him talk for an hour and 15 minutes in those analysis sessions. And it's something that John Duran needs to focus on. Of course, he's only a young lad, moves far away from home as well, so that's something getting used to, and he's got probably having more money, more influence, more people coming to him than ever before, and something that he's probably not ever been used to or prepared for. But the fact for him now is what Emery and Emery's closest confidence say is that they keep reminding him he's got to start focusing and start, being consistent. And as you say about the injuries, that little flare up he had in October time when he was out for a few weeks, wasn't a result of him being consistent.
And really, the opportunities are there. He's playing for a club that are, chasing, well, at the moment, we can say chasing, a Premier League challenge at the moment. At the very least, it looks like Villa will be competing for a Champions League place at the back end of the season. He's playing behind a really, really good striker. Like you say, it's not like he isn't getting minutes. The opportunities are there. And when the Conference League kicks off again, I'm sure he'll get starts in that competition. But at the moment, I kind of feel that if Watkins was to get injured and got, let's fingers crossed, touch wood, let's do everything that we need to do there, that doesn't happen. I feel like Duran, at the moment, the way he is, may not get the starts in the league, may not be trusted.
No, I completely agree with you. But at the same time, you got to look at Duran. Emery's now trusting him to play alongside Watkins when Villa are near to chase the game.
Bad.
Yeah, exactly. And he's made an impact in that. So I think what he's doing right now, he's ahead of development. I don't think there's a rush for him. It just comes back to his mentality. And I'm sure probably not being Emery. He's obviously involved in all things football and those that are willing to work with him. But Damian Villagani, the guy, the conduit between the dressing room and agents and the management staff, he would have spoken to Duran. He would have spoken to the agents and tried to reassure him, but tried to sort out the issues as well. It's a similar thing to Bertrand Traore, who is always injured for club, but yet he plays for Burkina Faso. So, yeah, if you said right now, if Ollie Watkins was injured, I imagine that Moussa Diaby and Leon Bailey would be the front two as split strikers, which, would probably infuriate John Duran a lot more. I don't think he will leave this month, but he's unpredictable on the pitch, off the pitch as well, so we'll have to see.
What about Clement Lenglet? I know you've been writing about him after the Middlesbrough game. He's obviously appeared more in recent times because Pau Torres is injured. But if Pau Torres hadn't got injured, I'm not sure we would have seen as much of him. Of course, he'd have probably started at the weekend against Middlesbrough. He's picked up more football recently than he had been getting. But it sounds like, again, from reading your article, that Barcelona aren't massively happy and the player isn't massively happy either, but Villa and Unai Emery are, because essentially he's doing what we brought him in to do.
Yeah, exactly. And probably Pau Torres injuries come at a good time in a way for Villa, because it shows that actually they can give Lenglet some game time. They can probably just calm down the concerns from Barcelona, who will probably want to sell him, who will definitely want to sell him in the summer, try and get some money for him, because they can't keep paying his wages for another 2 years. And the same for Lenglet as well, to pacify him in a way, because he went 13 straight Premier League games without playing a minute, and it's pretty feasible that if Pau didn't get injured, he still wouldn't play now. He's on a lot of money, but at the same time, Emery and Villa, they made a decision once Mings was injured that they're prepared to pay that money because they have to have two left-footed centre-backs. If they don't have two left-footed centre-backs, for Emery, he feels that's a real issue, because if Pau gets injured, then that completely changes the whole dynamic of the way Villa build up from the back. And right now, if you say that Lenglet was to leave, who is another left-footed centre-back on the market that they can get?
No.
Courtney House, you could say him, but he's a long way away from being even fit. And I think the plan is for him to go out on loan. So I think for Lenglet, it's just about playing, but I don't know if he's taking his chance, and I think there could be a few issues towards the end of the month when he's probably back on the bench and Powell's playing again.
He's been a big miss as well, hasn't he, Powell? He's fast becoming one of my favourite players, and I was really starting to notice over the last month or so how good he is. And then just as you're noticing those things and realising he's a key cog, he's taken out with injury, and not only is it affected Villa defensively, but it's actually affected us massively in possession and going forward. We've been nowhere near as good on the ball without Pau Torres.
No, Longlay's a decent player on the ball.
Yeah.
I think he made a few good. He's good at a few good diagonals. I think he's progressed the ball quite well. I think he ranks in the top 2% of centre backs in Europe for progressive passes. He's decent at that, but I think especially against a low block as well. I remember that Longley was used to being at Barcelona, with a bigger pitch, better. Number 10s getting involved. Always trying to find Messi when he was playing. I think now he's playing in a team against low blocks, increasingly so, Burnley, Middlesbrough, where it's a real struggle for him to progress the ball and to even assert his dominance. And the problem with Longley, I see, is I don't think he's got one standout strength. Like he's good at everything, or good at most things, but he doesn't jump out at me. So as soon as I saw Pau Torres, I thought, wow, this player's brilliant at progressing it. Every Konsa, his recovery pace. If you want to say Diego Carlos, you could say his stature, his power. With Longley, you just think, he's a good defender, but he's pretty easy to let leave out. He's quite the easy decision, isn't he? And that's the issue for him fundamentally.
Yeah, Dendoncker as well. He's, I think maybe Villa got a good offer for Dendoncker that they may accept it, but they'd of course have to bring in a replacement for him as well because he's the 4th, 5th central midfielder at the moment. But again, he's been needed and he's playing games.
Yeah, I think there's interest from sides in Europe, probably outside the top 5 leagues in Dendoncker. And I think Villa will be open to selling. They're open to selling him in the summer. I know he's featured a little bit more, but I do think they could get by without him. You could rearrange certain centre midfield if you're really short. You could have John McGinn in there sometimes. Tim's going to be coming back. I think the plan is for him to stay till the end of the season as well. And
do you not think he should have started at the weekend?
Yeah, I do. Not just because he's obviously a younger lad and is probably better in terms of long term, but also he's different to Dendoncker and Kamara. I felt they were quite. I thought Kamara was good, but they just basically the two same players, and they operate in the same area, doing the same job. So I would like to see him play, and I think that's probably a broader question, as in, does Emery trust these younger lads to come in and start these games, bar Jacob Ramsey?
Let's talk a little bit more about incomings then, Jacob. We've just discussed that it's probably not going to be a major January for Villa. And we saw last January as well, that Emery won't rush things. It doesn't feel to me like he's a massive fan of the January market. But if something was to come up like Moreno, who he thinks can improve things, he'd probably be given the licence to do it. Maybe a clever loan if something came up there. Now, Villa will be linked with a ton of players, as they always are. And people will do podcasts on Villa linked with so-and-so, where would he fit in the side, blah, blah, blah. But realistically, it's a load of rubbish, because another thing, and I find this in the transfer window, obviously the bulk of my media work comes within the transfer window. So I've been at TalkSport last week, I've been at Sky Sports News last week, and we'll be through the month. And you've covered other teams. Villa are notoriously difficult to get information out of. If you're getting information out about Villa, you're probably not going to the club. You're probably going to agents and speaking to them. But the agents' interests are very rarely with the club that we're interested in, Aston Villa. They'll be at the interest of the players that they're talking about. So, first of all, from the Villa side, and you trying to cover it, it's hard, isn't it? People always think, why do we never know what's going on about Villa? But you've covered different teams. Can you just explain to me and explain to the listeners the difference between covering Villa in a transfer window to covering Southampton in the Premier League last season, for example?
Yeah. It's frustrating for a few reasons, really. I think what Villa do is great in terms of how they operate and things like that, especially now with Emery here. He's got his Spanish circle who keep everything also in-house. They've got a lot of trust between them. I think the clubs I've covered, obviously I covered Southampton. You'll remember that where Villa and Southampton are completely two different ends of the spectrum. It was a very unhappy time at Southampton, very fragmented, where Villa's completely different. And you look at the likes of Villa, but also Liverpool, they don't tend to leak much. Arsenal in recent times. When a team's doing well, when everything's happy, you don't really, you might hear leaks, but they're far less frequent than, a Southampton were.
They're also far less likely to be right.
Yeah, and Manchester United as well. I think for me personally, it's been frustrating, but because I think every single transfer that's been, I heard about it. Sure with you, sure with Greg, everyone. They've heard about it, but the way we work is you've got to get everything double sourced, and getting that second source, Dan, keeps me up at night. I think in the summer towards the end. It was keeping me late up at night, and it's a nightmare. Even now there's a few things that we're working on in terms of outgoings, and I've been trying to find this second source for about 5 days. So, but it's interesting. I think from a football fan as well, I think it's a really good way to go for Villa. I don't mind it at all.
No, I mean, look, I'm not sat here claiming to be some kind of expert in the transfer world because I'm not. But obviously, I work in football. I talk about football. I'm doing it from a different standpoint, really, where I'm not doing it as a journalist and giving my opinion on what transfers are going to happen. I'm responding to links and what's going on and saying how players will fit in, what it means for that club, more giving my opinion than giving facts. But obviously, from a Villa perspective, I speak to enough people to have a fairly good idea of what's happening around the club by speaking to all the various people in different roles, different places that I speak to. And Villa are difficult. It's credit to them really, because remember that Danny Ings transfer. Very few people knew about that, and sometimes you can know something. Like there's been things that I've known over the years, but if I know something, I can't come on and do a podcast about it because you've almost been trusted with that information, and you don't want to be the person that breaks that story if it's going to cause problems with the club. There's always that kind of thing to consider as well. I was at Sky last week, and in the morning, we go doing our roundup. So Sky the same, they get a story, they speak to someone, but it needs to be second sourced. So Sky had the Felipe Anderson story. They'd obviously managed to get it second sourced by someone or near enough second sourced. But, I'm sat there thinking, that's I don't see that. Just again from speaking to people and just having probably a deeper knowledge of Villa than a lot of people. I just never thought that was something that was going to happen, and that rumour's gone away. But quite often, rumours will come up one day. You won't hear anything again about that for 3 weeks. I doubt we'll hear about Felipe Anderson to Villa again. But it's weird how it works, isn't it? Because everyone in the transfer world got completely different agendas, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and that's the struggle. And you probably get wiser with age. I think that's one thing that we do. I like at the Athletic is everything like Sky is that has to be double sourced. So even if an agent tells you something, you have to corroborate that with 1, 2, 3 different people, and then only then you can start to think about putting it out. And then when we do put it out, we will still check for right of replies. I don't think fans know it's right of replies with the relevant parties, the relevant clubs. So it's a long process, but in a way, I quite like stories about Aston Villa breaking because it kind of speeds things on. So, like last year, the Zaniolo thing, we thought, oh, come on, look, we heard something about Zaniolo, but it's difficult coming out of Italy, coming out of Spain, and then a journalist on Twitter might put it out there, and then you think, okay, right, we can now start to accelerate. We can now go to the club. We can now go to the second source, and it's starts to push things along a little bit. But when you've got that story and it's not gone out yet, or it's quite quiet, and you're still trying to find a second source, it's probably the reason why my hairline's going so far back and why I look 10 years older than I actually am.
But yeah, you've spoke about the added element now of Emery's tight circle. This isn't me having a dig at Gerrard, as I always do. I think when things weren't going well, you've got different people involved. Villa are secretive anyway, regardless of Emery, regardless of Gerrard, regardless of who the manager is. But when Gerrard's the manager and there's a different circle, there's probably more chance of something coming out within that circle. Now you add Emery and his real tight-knit circle into the proceedings as well, coupled with the fact that Villa are secretive anyway. It's almost harder than ever. Arguably, the hardest club in the country to get anything concrete out of.
Yeah, for sure. And you might have the phone numbers of the relevant people, but these are high-end operators and they're busy. So getting information back out from them is it's difficult. But also, I'm pretty lucky in where I work compared to if you're working at somewhere else. Is that because we're quite a fairly big company across different countries. We've got Spanish-speaking people. We've got Spanish people that work in La Liga, covering them. Who might know a player from there, a manager from over there. So we can rely on different people. But yeah, compared to covering Southampton, I'm relying on more people to help and to help find and second source things than I ever have done before. I think at Southampton, if I saw a story, second sourcing would be quite easy, but this is a completely different situation. But I think it's fantastic, and it really excites me when I don't hear about something and it all of a sudden comes out. Then it makes my day because I'm thinking, right, let's find out what's happening. Let me write a piece on when he gets announced, things like that. So it's really exciting, and hopefully they can surprise me again in the next couple of days.
Yeah, you've got the added bonus of David Ornstein working where you work as well, because that guy's phone book is probably the fullest phone book in the country, isn't it?
No, it's phenomenal reporter.
Yeah, I've worked with him before. Probably the most professional person I've ever worked with in my life. When I was at the Athletic doing a few pods with him, I was just sat there thinking, wow, this guy, not only has he got the contacts, not only is he an excellent writer, the way he talks as well, he's got everything. He's like unbelievable. Like what a person to have worked with. And I only did it a few times, really. He in the transfer window is just incredible, and in football in general, really, to be fair.
Yeah, and what people don't see is something I didn't realise is that he's very extremely supportive as well.
Nice guy.
Yeah, the way you work, obviously, whoever's in your channels or will see that you're working on certain pieces, and David will always come in and offer encouragement, offer advice as well, like a lot of the senior writers, which has been a big benefit for me covering Southampton and then moving to Villa as well.
Yeah, look, it's been a real learning curve for me over the last few years, seeing how companies work. Obviously, I spent time with the Athletic and now at Sky as well, because when I'm there, you're seeing the journalists and what they're doing and the people they're speaking to and how hard they're working. People think that things are just plucked from thin air at times, but they're not. So much work goes into trying to get this scoop. And look, the Athletic will get things wrong. Sky will get things wrong. I've got tons of stuff wrong in the past, as people will well know. But you're sometimes only as good as the information that you're getting. But people work round the clock to try and just get that scoop, don't they? It is an exciting time. I actually think this January will be really, really quiet in general. In the Premier League, there's a few things going on, and I always think it's interesting when something pops up like the other day of Timo Werner from nowhere to Spurs, and it's already pretty far in advance, and no one's really been talking about that at any point, have they? By the way, I think that's a good fit. I've got a feeling that's going to work. I've just got something inside me that says that's going to work under Postecoglou, which might not be great for Villa actually, because we'd like to keep Spurs away from us. But Villa had it kind of. I can't remember if you were covering Villa at this point. But Tielemans kind of came from nowhere, but it was virtually done when I think it was David Ornstein that broke that one. Actually, I don't think you were covering Villa at that time, though, were you?
No, and I don't want to have a gripe, but that's why I get a little bit frustrated or a bit perplexed when I see these guys on Twitter who I don't know who they work for, but they will buy a blue tick and they'll and they've got no background to things, and then they just they put some stories out there that might stick. Most of the time they don't. And from a selfish perspective, I spend probably 6 hours, 7 hours of the day checking out those stories to see if I can verify them. And when it comes to a dead end and it's actually untrue, you think, waste of time. But so I try to look at who's the best source and who's the most reliable for information. And sadly, not a lot of it does come on Twitter.
I always think as well, Greg, when he was doing it as well, you're at Villa every week. You're at Bodymore Heath every week. You're speaking to the people that would know what's going on. Although people can't always, reveal stuff, they can probably give you an inkling or send you in the right direction and stuff. So much rubbish gets spouted. There's something going on at Villa. You're probably going to know about it.
Yeah, but also it's just the way that certain people will dress things up. So like there's this major exclusive about Douglas Luiz being not for sale about a month ago, and I saw some aggregators tweet, and I just thought, oh my word, like, do we have to really say this? Like, it's not that big a deal, but yeah, you're completely right. Obvious. Yeah, though the Villa, if you're at Bodymore and you're speaking on the ground, I'm very privileged to be able to talk to Emery, go into this great training ground every week is fantastic. But even if they can't tell you anything, but you do get a general sense, you do get a general lean of where they're going. So, for example, it's quite obvious that Villa could do with a goalkeeper, and if not this month, January, then they could do it in the summer. Same with the right back. So we'll have to see how both of them materialise as well.
So back to, we've gone on ended up doing a bit of a story about how the transfer window works for journalists, which wasn't really my intention. But you say about a right back and a goalkeeper. Do you think if the right player came up now for those positions, do you think Villa would do it in January?
Yeah, I think they would.
Do you think they'd overpay to do it?
No, I don't think they
No.
would. But what you have to contend with is if the right player comes up, someone that's on the list that Monchi, Emery, the scouting recruitment love, and they would do it, I imagine, because they would just take out the money from the summer's budget and they'll put it into this because, if the right player comes available, he does. Alex Moreno was a great opportunity last year. I think the benefit was that he wasn't too expensive, but if Emery wanted someone like Moreno, who was probably £15 million more, I think they'd do it, and they just have to take that money out of the summer budget.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I asked for loads of questions. So of course, it's January. There's going to be a ton of transfer questions. There was a lot about Duran that we've already covered. We're kind of saying, and David Ornstein, I think I said this today actually, that there's no expected inbound activity for Villa, but people are asking about individual players. So like Dybala, for example, is one that's been floating around since the summer because we know about this low release clause that he has now. Telling me Villa could get Dybala for 12 million euros. I've got to say, I would be all for that. He's the top assister in Serie A. Obviously, he will have a friendship with Emi Martinez as well. But like we're saying, there's nothing expected. There's probably nothing in that.
No, it's just, they were linked to those type of player for a while, weren't they? João Felix, Dybala.
You know what? From what I heard, I can say it now because he's gone to Barcelona. But if Villa could have got Felix, they would have done it. But they couldn't because he wanted to go to Barcelona.
Yeah, and any of those type of players who are got European pedigree, who are quite well known, they do fit the criteria because Monchi scouts, he talks in those.
That's what
those
he
circles.
does as well, isn't it?
Yeah, he moves in those circles as well. Marcus Acuna, player that Villa would have loved in the summer. If the opportunity is there next in the summer, this coming summer, and he's fit, he's available. Luca Dean, might leave, then they might do that. But he comes from Sevilla. Monchi knows him. Clement Lenglet as well. Monchi signed him for Sevilla as well. So those type of players and those type of high profile or fairly high profile, well-travelled Europeans can't rule Villa out from getting them.
Yeah, there's a few questions around Chris Heck and the crest. I've not really covered it. I've done a few tweets recently, been a bit more vocal about what I think of certain decisions. But John M said, any news on the crest and if they're taking the fan backlash into account or just continuing? Doesn't bother me either way, but seems to be a lot of backlash and unfair not to listen to it when they've said they have. Now, I've got my own opinions on stuff like this. I've been part of the consultation group in the past. I'm not anymore. Being brutally honest, I never found it useful. I didn't think that with the exception of my old man says, I didn't really feel like anyone ever asked. I include myself in this. By the way, I was very inexperienced at the time. Wasn't probably as confident to do it as I would be if I was part of it now. But I felt like David Michaels of my old man said was the only person that ever really stood up to the club with things at that time, and everyone else kind of sat there quite quietly. That may have changed now, but that was my experience of when I was there. And like I say, I include myself in that criticism. My other thing is that just it kind of always felt to me like decisions are made. That decision isn't going to change. It's then passed to those groups to then filter the information out. But I don't think that's how it should work. I feel like there should be consultation. And I've got to be honest, the crest stuff, I thought that what Villa's process last year was a load of rubbish with the crest. It was always going to be the circular badge, and I've heard certain things about the company that was used to create that crest being the same company that created the crest by the person that was there at a different club when they changed their crest, which I didn't really like. I don't know how true that is, but I definitely heard that story. And now this consultation again with the crest. Heck's obviously come in. He's decided he's not a fan of the crest, and I put my cards on the table. I sent him a message when he did that, saying that I completely agreed with it. Take stock, take time, look at it. It then now feels like they've just gone and done the same thing again, not really consulted with anyone, already chose the crest, come out with it, and if it's the one I've seen, I don't like it, which is my opinion. There might be people that do like it, but I just feel they're not getting this kind of thing right at the moment off the pitch.
No, and it's one of those. It's a real fractured issue because, from my perspective, everything's going fantastic on the pitch, but in the backdrop, it's always been these off the field matters that I've been, increasingly aware of since I've started. I think, the club crest is it's a big part, but it's part of a broader array of off the field matters. I've been for months trying to push through this piece on the Villa Trust and the ticket prices and the lower grounds and things like that. And it's been difficult because of the politics at stake. And I'm hoping that after 5 months of getting through and lobbying and talking and having complaints thrown at me, that we can eventually get it through. The piece on the club crest will come this week, which I'm glad we'll definitely do. It's a frustrating issue, and it's something that I'm not surprised about. I always assumed on the low that they would just push through their own idea. The way they did it, I think, in that meeting as well, although they, you could say the people there haven't always asked the best questions, I think they're really important because they bring this issue to light, and they're there to relay it. So the fact that they were there, Chris Heck was there, and he did this video trailer kind of unveiling the badge, he kind of shot himself in the foot because they're like, hold on, you've done all this, you've put this, fireworks, lovely montage, but we've not actually decided on the crest. And I think they're trying to backtrack, and there's a few issues going on. The FA are going to get involved now because they want to make sure that there's been consultation with the fans group, which is a rule that came out a few seasons ago. But I just think it's a very messy way to do it. And there's a few things where I think Villa are top class operation in terms of the football side. There's still a long way to go in terms of off the field. But in fairness to Chris Heck, he only came in May. He spent the first 6 months surveying the scenes. He wants to make changes. But I think for him as well, it's probably a learning curve in the processes he goes through to make these changes. It's not the same as what is in America.
Yeah, look, I wasn't in the meeting as I've just stated, but I did read that my old man said piece about coming out of the meeting and all the stuff about the crest. And there was a term in there where he kind of said that someone said, I can't remember if it said who it was or not, leave it to the professionals. No, that's not the attitude at all. I've got to say, I'm very, very unimpressed with a lot of things with Villa off the pitch at the moment.
Yeah, that is the badge. The badge that's leaked is the badge that it will be. And the fact that they're so far down the line with it without
it's going to happen, isn't it?
But also, I think it just sends a wrong message. It's the same with ticket prices. It's the same with the Carabao Cup game when they charge £30 for it. Same with not telling the fans about the whole end, the changes to the whole end. It does feel like fans are being overlooked, and I think I've been pretty careful in how I say this because I don't want to just come across as a guy from the south coming in and saying how bad negative these things are when things are going so well on the pitch. But at the same time, these are real pertinent issues for match going fans. Villa Park redevelopment. You can have your opinion on whether to push ahead with that or hold it and allow Emery to have more money in the transfer window. But these type of issues, the ticket prices were it just feels like the sense of then fans aren't always coming first, and that's a real issue, and that's something that needs to be pushed back on.
I completely agree with what you're saying. Villa are so good on the pitch matters, are perfect. I've zero complaints, but that doesn't mean that people should get away with stuff off the pitch. And there'll be people that say, "Oh, what are you moaning for? We're second in the league." But people should be held accountable for things if they're wrong. And I think that if Villa weren't doing well at the moment, you'd be seeing so many people. I mean, people are kicking off anyway, in fairness, but Villa, they're getting away with it a little bit because things are so good on the pitch at the moment. I went into I can't remember what it's called now, the Terrace View for a game, just to see what it's like. I've never been in there before. I've not commented on the Terrace View or the lower grounds because I haven't been there myself, so it's not for me to comment on. I went into the Terrace View, and I can completely understand why fans have used that as a vehicle to get a season ticket. I'm not knocking those people at all, because if I didn't have a season ticket, I would be doing exactly the same thing. But the overall experience in there for what people are paying to have the facilities that they should have as a normal match going fan. I don't understand what was in there that was so special that people are paying more for. It's just a normal concourse, but you can get served with a reasonable amount of time. You can't get that in the Holt End. I sit in the Holt End, and I've got mates that sit in the North End, and they've come to the Holt End with me, and they tell me that the North End's far worse than the Holt End. I almost feel at the moment like Villa are trying to run before they can walk. You've got to get the basics right before you start doing all these grand fancy plans. And I haven't seen the lower grounds. I will say I've heard good things about it, and I will try it out before the end of the season. I didn't think the club's communication with that was brilliant, but if it's good, it's good. Terrace View, though, I was very, very unimpressed with.
Yeah, it does seem like it's a bottleneck situation, because at one hand you've got this fantastic figure in Unai Emery, a guy that's dragging Villa up from the ground in terms of how the expectations of how playing in Europe. But it got put to me a couple of months ago that what Emery's doing is dragging everything up, and the rest of the departments are flying by the seat of their pants because they're having to grow as well. And to match Emery's expectations, to match where Villa want to be, they have to increase the revenue. They have to do it through different ways. Now they're not going to do the redevelopment, which is an extra 8,000 fans. That could be quite profitable, could be better in terms of revenue. So you think, all right, what are they going to do now? And what, as a result, is the terrace view, the lower grounds. You just start to think, are they going to squeeze even more? And there's a point where if they keep squeezing, there's going to be no more juice left at the current state of Villa Park. And I think that is a big issue, and it's something that I do think there will be a breaking point at some point, and it's just whether Chris Heck and those responsible for them realise that, and they can just slowly find out a different way whilst keeping Villa obviously hugely competitive on the pitch.
Yeah, look, I don't want to throw you under the bus here, but I know that you've met Chris Heck. I've never met him, so I can't comment on what he's like as a person. Only say as much as you can. But how did you find that meeting?
Yeah, I think he was someone that's coming quite new. He's still learning. I think it's not a bad thing that he took 6 months to make his first public statement.
No, I agree with that.
On the media, I think he wants to learn. There's, in fairness to him, the lower grounds, and I think he wasn't responsible for that. It was a decision made pre him, so it'd be unfair to
agreed. I should have said that with the terrace view as well. In fairness,
yeah, and he's having to do a lot of things, in terms of sorting out Castor, the shirt sponsor for next year. I think they've secured a really good deal for next year, and these are good deals, and ultimately his success will be judged by those at Villa, in terms of how much sponsorship can he bring in? Can he grow the revenue? Can he impress the owners, and Wes Edens especially? But I think he's a person that's still adapting, and he's still having to adapt. And I think although he's making mistakes now, and he's made big mistakes, like a lot of them within Villa have in terms of the communication as well, I think it'd probably be a safer bet to judge him in a year.
Yeah, look, this is the most basic comparison I can come up with here, and I said it to you earlier, but before we came on. So Chris Heck has experience in this realm. He has the experience in this realm in sport. I've got experience of podcasting and whatnot. If you throw me into an NFL podcast, I don't know enough about it to do it. I can say that I'm good at talking, and I can talk, and I know what I'm doing, but I've got no experience in NFL. And that's how I feel a little bit with Chris Heck, in that he's been thrown into this environment, or picked to go into this environment, and he's got, I'm sure he's done some wonderful things in American sport. I'm sure he's got experience of how that works. But the Premier League and a unique club like Aston Villa, they are different beasts. You can't come in, and this is the few things I've seen that have rubbed me up the wrong way. You can't proclaim to know it all and have an understanding in this short space of time. Villa are a unique club. We've got a unique fan base, a very demanding fan base in a lot of ways, and with this historical club with so much heritage, and we as fans have an idea of what things should be like. Of course, every fan's going to have different opinions. But you can't come in and make decisions about something like the Villa badge and not consult the fans. That just is not on in any way at all.
No, you've got to lean on the fans, especially when you're coming in. You've got to rely on the mood on the ground. You've got to realise what they want, and the issue for him as well is that he's coming in, and there's a lot of issues, and he's coming into a whole new regime that Purslow was leaving at the time, who was instrumental in pushing for the Witter Station, the stadium redevelopment, all these issues. This is not a simple redevelopment. He then had to think, where's the money going to come from? Because I need to satisfy the owners, but I also need to satisfy Emery. But at the same time, I have to try and keep the fans happy. Ultimately, as it turned out, that he's probably not doing that very well at the moment. But there's a lot of issues that he's having to deal with. And that's why you need to lean on the fans to make these core decisions, to keep them on side, and to mainly play politics in a way, to buy a little bit more time and a bit more patience too.
Yeah, I've watched this club get things wrong off the pitch over the last 5-10 years, as long as I've been kind of doing this kind of things, and get a lot of things wrong that could have been rectified if they'd spoken to the right people. And I just think sometimes that's where Villa really let themselves down. And I can't even remember what it's called now. It was called the FCG. It's not called that, the Fan Consultation Group. It's called the FAB now, isn't it? Use the FAB better. Those people love Aston Villa. They're not going to have all the answers. They're not going to get everything right, but they can point you in the right direction and stop you making mistakes, which is this new crest thing. it just feels like Villa are on the complete wrong path with it, and they're going to make another mistake. It already feels like we've got about 5,000 badges at the moment, dotted around the ground. It's just a bizarre situation and something that needs sorting.
Do you know what? For the piece that's going out Wednesday, I think my intro's been: you go into the press conference, and you see Unai Emery wearing one badge.
There's too many badges.
You see the one behind him, the sponsorship advertising. There's another badge there. And then I think there's a separate one. The older one, like it's on a table. You think, oh my word! I actually had to Google how many times have they changed the badge in the last 5 years, 6 years. I couldn't keep up.
Too many badges knocking around. It used to be this man. I think he sadly passed a few years ago. I can't remember his actual name. But he was the badge man, and he used to have a waistcoat just full of Villa badges. He'd be struggling at the moment to fit all Villa's badges on his waistcoat, honestly, because I don't get it. Like I said, I agreed with the fact he took stock of this, but not for the sake of this new badge that I've seen. And if it's the one I've seen, I'm just what they're doing. What it is, yeah. I just don't understand what they're doing at all. Just quickly, you touched on it briefly about Castor and the fact that Villa will be changing kit sponsors next season. Me and you know who it is. We can't say who it is, but it's one to be excited about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's an immense source of satisfaction as well that they've managed to do that. And although the problems haven't been solved for Castor in terms of the short term, in terms of the wet look, they're managing to get out of the partnership, and they're managing to get a really good partnership with a new big sports brand that's going to hopefully help finance a lot more things and increase the revenue, which Chris Hex's remit too. So I think there's a few good things going on there, and also I do believe that shirts and stuff will be a lot cheaper, or marginally cheaper than they were this time in the summer as well. So that's probably something that's a plus point for Villa and Chris Heck.
Yeah, I know someone that's seen the kits as well, and apparently they're unbelievable. Really, really good. Apparently the badge isn't great. So, yeah, look, it is what it is. But this is an exciting brand to be involved in. I'm looking forward to when the club do announce it. I'm not sure when they'll be able to do that, but that's going to be one that the fans will absolutely love when Villa fans find out who that is. We've done a 42-minute podcast so far, Jacob. We haven't actually talked about the game at the weekend, so we better rectify that quite quickly. Villa got to the fourth round of the FA Cup for the first time in 1,200 years at the weekend. They left it late, a deflected Matty Cash effort. My main takeaway from that game was that thank God we didn't get a replay. That was the last thing that we needed at the moment. Middlesbrough set up well, didn't they? I think they flooded the midfield. A little bit of a low block, but I actually thought the flooding of the midfield was what stopped Villa playing. But as Villa have done quite often recently, in fact, they left it late, but they got the job done, and that is what good teams do.
Yeah, can I be quite rude and say it was a bit of a stinker? I thought it's just
first half was so boring.
Yeah, I was just one of those games. I'm quite engrossed in these games. I did admit that my mind was drifting a little bit. I was thinking,
you were at the game as well.
Yeah,
I was falling asleep on the sofa.
The only good thing is there's an old gentleman next to me who was he was a fan. He was getting so angry at the referee. He's coming over and he's banging my desk. I don't know if he realised I was there, and everything was shaking. I was just, to be fair, towards the end of the first half, I just spent most of the time looking at him. To be fair.
Was he a Borough fan or a Villa?
Yeah, Borough fan. He was fuming.
I thought the ref was all for Villa. I've got to say.
I know, and I did say to him, because I got a monitor near me. I said, "Come and have a look at this. Maybe I think you're a bit lucky in certain situations." And he did calm down after that, but
definite penalty.
Yeah, exactly. I showed him the penalty.
Unbelievable. Bring back VAR.
Yeah, you do miss it, don't you?
Yeah, I didn't like it not being there.
No, it was in a way a low block, but it's one of those blocks where it wasn't as deep. There was a short vertical distance between the deeper centre back and the striker. But what Middlesbrough have done, and you have to notice with Burnley, Sheffield United, Drinsky, is that because Villa are so centric in terms of the box midfield, the two number 10s drifting in, what they're doing now, these teams are just blocking the passing lanes. The strikers aren't pressing the centre backs because that's how Emery wants to play through the thirds initially. All they're doing is basically blocking the pass into the double pivots, and then in turn blocking the pass into John McGinn and Jacob Ramsey if he drifts inside. And then you've just got to go on the outside. And they're just showing Matty Cash and the other left back, Alex Moreno, and they're just showing them the play. And then you might get a little bit lost, and you can't go back inside because all Villa's bodies are in there, but they're getting crowded out. So I asked Emery about that afterwards, and he said that's the next stage of that Villa's development. They've got to be better in there, and I'm sure having key personnel like Torres, Tillemans, Buendia will eventually help with that.
So again, I haven't got my phone in front of me now, but people are asking about Buendia and Mings. I'm not expecting to see either this season, realistically.
No. It's good that they're giving updates. Tyler Mings has done a lot of good work
Yeah.
in terms of updating fans. But I see it's highly, highly unlikely that they'll feature us all this season.
Did you get to speak to anyone after the game, player-wise, in the mix zone or anything?
I was in the press conference because annoyingly, because Emery, it does take a while to come out for his press conferences, more than any other manager I've ever seen. He likes to have a debrief, he likes to calm down. I decided to wait for him this time. Meanwhile, another reporter went down to the mix zone. I've been stung a few times waiting for players in the mix zone, and none of them showing up, and then in turn missing out on Unai Emery. So I thought, let me speak to Emery and let me get this piece filed before the long drive home.
I wanted to know about Cash's celebration.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that. Matt Mayer, who went down to the mix, I did say, can you ask Matty Cash about his celebration? And apparently, if you want to believe this, it had nothing to do with anything. It was just he randomly put his fingers to his ears.
He's been getting a bit of criticism online. Obviously, a lot of people are saying Villa need a right back. Some people, when they do that, won't say Villa need competition for players to top standard right back. A lot of people will tweet Matty Cash isn't good enough, which I completely disagree with. But I'm not buying that story. I know his family listen to a lot of the podcast and see what goes on social media and stuff. Yeah, I feel it was directed. I'm not Matty Cash, so I could be completely making this up, but it feels like could have been directed at that. To me, you put your finger in your ears for no reason. Celebration. He's never done that before.
No, it reminded me of when Harry Maguire scored it. It was at Albania or something, and he put his fingers to his ears. So
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's obviously a point of reason behind that, but yeah, it's important when we report that Villa want another right back. It's not just to get rid of Matty Cash; it's just to provide competition. Because if you get rid of Matty Cash, you don't want every Konsa playing 30 games there because it takes away his strengths at centre back. Also, you lose a bit of attacking guile as well. So I'm glad for Matty Cash. He stands on the edge of the box a lot, doesn't he, from all these set plays? So it's about time that he got one and one.
Was a player that struggled with Emery a little bit when he first came in, and he's got it. Sorry, I was put off by something flashing up on my screen. Also, my light seemed to. There's an episode of Stranger Things during this podcast. It flickering. I'm not sure why that keeps happening, but he actually went into detail talking about the set pieces, and he said himself in his interview that he was hanging around the edge of the box quite a lot. So it was nice to see one go in. But Villa set pieces, Greg and myself waxed lyrical about Austin McPhee probably 6 weeks or so ago now. Villa set pieces. Villa are now getting a lot of goals off set pieces and breakdowns of set pieces, aren't they?
Yeah, and also it's underlying the importance now when Villa have started to tire a little bit, when maybe the invention of fluidity has just gone out of play and they're having to just grind out games. This is where set pieces are fantastic, and they're every time there's a set piece, it feels like it's a bit more theatre now. Austin McPhee comes out of the dugout.
He loves it.
He loves it. He's looking at the iPad. He's looking at certain things. The players are looking at him for what the triggers, and then I think, right, what's Douglas Luiz done? He put his hand behind his back. What does that mean? I'm trying to look in the box. It's quite. There's a lot of theatre going on, a lot of cinema going on, and I like it. And I think the delivery as well has been really impressive as well recently. And not many hit the first man.
Yeah, I find set piece stuff absolutely fascinating at the moment. So I'm really interested in the Villa side of things, and I've done a lot of reading about it and looked into things and spoke to people. And as I say, I absolutely couldn't love Austin McPhee anymore. But I watched the Arsenal game, or the highlights of the Arsenal game earlier, and they did a lovely little routine, the little short one to Ødegaard, and then it was crossed in. They should have scored off it really, but now they can't do that again. They've done it once.
Villa have got 2 set play coaches, haven't they? Austin obviously leads it, but they've got another one that helps them with the data and things.
The staff is growing by the week with Villa. He was growing in a bad way under Steven Gerrard because he kept having his mates, the coaching staff. But Villa's coaching staff is now, and data teams and whatnot. It's a massive operation. It's like MI5.
It's crazy. And they've got full back individual coaches, guys that work with Ollie Watkins after training. It's every detail's covered. And although Emery, irritatingly does a lot to mention it too much, it is a big operation, and he's got a lot of his confidence there, which can only be a good thing. Strength in numbers.
Yeah, right then, let's call it a day. We've done an hour now, I think. Jacob, thank you ever so much for joining me and covering your Athletic colleague, Greg Evans. I always love having you on. You've been on loads anyway, but it was good to do like a full full on hour with you today and discuss a wide range of topics, because we've gone through a lot there, and hopefully the Villa fans have enjoyed it. So anything you want to say before we go? You got anything coming up? I'll be looking out for that club crest piece in the middle of the week, that's for sure.
Club crest. I saw one of the questions about FFP. This has been on the agenda for a long time, but we've decided to wait until January, because when the issue or the topic becomes pertinent, and that will be out as well in the coming week to 10 days, I want to say. So yeah,
cool. Looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm myself, if people are interested, there might be 3 or 4 people that are interested in what I'm doing this week at Sky a couple of times, Tuesday, Friday, and Wednesday I'm doing another hour hosting at TalkSport 2. So I'll try and shoehorn as much Villa stuff into those shows as I possibly can for those that are interested. Yeah, as I say, Jacob, really loved talking to you. Thank you to Luke for sponsoring us. Hope everyone who listens and watches had a brilliant New Year and a brilliant Christmas. We did take a little bit of a break that we didn't really announce. I think things get a bit busy around Christmas, family life and whatnot, so just decided to have a little break, but all back to normal now. The schedule will be as it normally is with all the Villa content on this channel, so apologies for the little break, but yeah, come back refreshed and it'll all start as normal this week. Take care of yourselves, and as always, up the Villa.